Okay, we're learning the Sicha. We'll be learning the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Noach from the year Tafshin Lamed Aleph, which at the time was still 1970. So let's bring up the text. Hold on. Okay. Okay, so we're Parshas Noach, second day of MarCheshvan, which is mamish like today, and we're in Tafshin Lamed 1970. Hey, Aaron, hold on a second. Trying to correct the page here. Okay. So the Rebbe says like this: Yedua, it's known that Tishrei Isius Reishis, the four letters Tishrei, Tafshin Reish Yud, which make the name Tishrei. Also, if you move the letters around, makes the word Reishis, which means the beginning or the first. B'afal pisha tevis Reishis tzarich liyas ba'alef, even though you have to add an aleph in Reishis to spell it properly, so it's missing the aleph. V'ilu Tishrei hu Isius Reishis chaser aleph, and when you write Reishis, turning the letters of Tishrei around, it's lacking the letter aleph. Is Harametzina we find Shigam v'pasik eretz asher tamid einei like avaya lekecha ba mireishis hashana ad achis hashana nemer reishis chaser aleph. We have a verse to support that. This is the verse that says that God watches Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. It says the word reishis missing the aleph. But once, so we have a source that we could say it, so to say, with lacking an aleph. It's not such a geferlich. It's not such a hard thing. Once look at ask the question, the pasuk atzmai, the spelling has to be with an aleph. That's the way one spells it. So the question would be in the verse itself, Ma'adu reishis chaser aleph. So why is reishis when you say that God watches Eretz Yisrael from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? Why is the aleph missing? The Gemara asks the question. The Gemara answers. The Gemara says, this is an idea that's brought down. We spoke about it this year in my sukkah. That Kol Shana Shiroisha B'Tchilasa Misasheres B'Soifai. Sorry, Kol Shana Shirosha B'Tchilasa. Every year that starts off Rosh means in poverty in the beginning. Misasheres B'Soifai will be wealthy at the end. So if you start off in a poor situation in the beginning, poor can mean many things, poor in a lot of things, but a year that starts off, so to say, negative in the beginning ends positive, ends with wealth. Like it says, Kol Shana Shirasha B'Tchilasa, any year that starts off in a negative, in Russia, in poverty, Misasheris is wealthy at the end. The Gemara says that the fact that it says the year, it says Reishis without a aleph, means to say also Reishis could be in this case poverty. So the Gemara basically answers that really the correct way of spelling the beginning of the year would be Reishis with an aleph. The reason it takes away the aleph and it spells Reishis because Reishis without an aleph grows to mean poverty. Therefore, the Gemara says, so why doesn't it have an aleph? The reason is that the Rosh B'Tchilasa Chisaron Shalais Ubefrat Chisaron Shalais Aleph Tchilas Kolais is Moira Alelufei Shalaylam Shaydeza Misasheres B'Soifai. That if it's lacking a letter, the letter itself is lacking, shows that the person is lacking. Maybe blessing, the year starts off lacking. So at the end, we'll end off in wealth. It means if you start off a year and you're saying, oy vey, some people say the year's starting off so bad. The Gemara actually says if the year started off bad, it's a good sign. It's a good omen because it means that the end is going to be successful. If you start off very good in the beginning of the year, maybe then you should be concerned, seemingly from the Talmud. The reason is, the fact that it's lacking, it's poverty in the beginning, that is the condition, so to say. that something that starts off bad will end off very good, will end off positive, wealthy. As the Mittler Rebbe says, Vidrush, when he talks about in the Maimer of Lahavin Kavanas Atkiyos, to understand what are the Kavanas, what are the intentions one has to have in the blowing of the shofar. So he says over there, the Mittler Rebbe says that Rosh Hashanah Chayzrim Kol Advarim Lekadmusan. Comes Rosh Hashanah, everything starts again over again, meaning the whole creation starts again. Which, like he says, Hu Inyan Aliyas Hamalchus Adel B'chinas Isnasis Altzmis. That means the world goes back all the way. So it's called Aliyas Hamalchus, going back, so to say, the king. The idea that God wants to be king, he kind of reconsiders this whole idea, not just in the level of what type of king, but his nasis atzmis, all the way to the essence of God. The whole idea of creation goes back. The thought process of creation, the motivation for creation is all challenged and all questioned when Rosh Hashanah comes. The Sharshim Makarim goes all the way back to its root. Heichel mi'inin ha'alif or pnei melech chayim. And he says it goes all the way back to the aleph, which starts the idea of or pnei melech, that in the face, the radiant of the king is life. And that idea also has to be considered or reconsidered. Does the God want to manifest in the idea of or pnei melech chayim? That the pnei melech, the face of the king, oozes and gives off, manifests chayim, life. That's the beginning of everything, the idea of or pnei melech chayim. And how do we bring back down from the original source that God should want to, so to say, recreate and be king, that God should be king? It has to be a vacuum. Rasha means poverty, right? So there has to be a vacuum in the beginning. So the Mitzvah Rebbe says, and that's the condition, that there's oisher, there's wealth at the end. So the condition for wealth at the end is that even if there's going to be poverty in the beginning, don't worry, there'll be wealth at the end. But almost there's a condition that how can there be wealth at the end? How can we have that God should be king? There has to be the vacuum. That God rests all the way up, Moraim, from high place, Kodesh separate, Eshkain, God rests in the word Shechina. Dafke vestake v'shval ruach, and where does he want to go down to? This is the humility. So the humility is where you get to the essence. Ubavaida, what's this mean in our service? What do we have to do about it? Harizeh inisha kabbalas. Rosh Hashanah starts, the idea of poverty is where you don't realize your own inner wealth as far as your character goes, your milas go. I'm so smart, I'm so capable, I'm so talented. You're not showing your talents, you're not showing your wealth, your inner wealth. But the idea of Kabbalas, I'm accepting the yoke. That's an act of, so to say, poverty. It's not about you at all. Accepting the yoke. That is what Rosh Hashanah is about. Rosh Hashanah is all about you accepting God as king. The Rebbe says, of course, the idea of Kabbalas, accepting the yoke, is not something that's only exclusive to Rosh Hashanah. The whole year we have to have Kabbalas, accepting the yoke of God. Meaning to say, how does that demonstrate you accept the yoke? At the end of the day, it's not about you. It's not what you understand. It's not if it works for you. God says this is what you have to do. This is what you do. At the end of the day, the way we serve God is not because our minds or hergish, our feelings, tell us this is the right thing to do. Or at least your mind or heart don't distract you or don't pull you away from serving Hashem. They don't get in the way of it. The avodah has to be, he says, the whole avodah is that we accept God as king. It's like an ox that has to have a yoke. That the yoke is there, it trains the ox to be obedient. But the rest of the year, the difference between the Kabbalas, so he's asking, so if you're saying the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah is to accept the yoke, the idea of accepting the yoke is something we have to do constantly. So what's Rosh Hashanah special? So he goes, the accepting the yoke throughout the year is how you serve God. So it's a method of avoda. Mashayim Rosh Hashanah comes to Rosh Hashanah, it's the idea of accepting God as king. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kabbalas all, Huloi b'shvil avoda elazeh and shel avoda atzma. The avoda itself is to awaken the self, the Kabbalas all, accepting the yoke. It means when you're throughout the year and you have issues or you have pushback from your mind, heart, or other distractions that tell you that you shouldn't be doing a mitzvah. So you have to dig into your Kabbalah soul like a servant who says, I know I'm not in the mood right now, but I'm going to do it anyways. Means the idea is to do the mitzvah. And the mitzvah needs to be done. And if there's a distraction, you have Kabbalah soul and you do it. Rosh Hashanah, the avoda is to get in touch with your Kabbalah soul, to get in touch with your idea that I am a servant of God. I'm accepting the yoke, the mitzvahs. V'talmud davar, why is Rosh Hashanah? The idea of Kabbalah soul. We want to reawaken that God should be the king, and we have to awaken from the core, from the source. Again, not where God is kind of withdrawing a bit in his kingship. He's king, but he's kind of withdrawing a bit and he wants to see how we behave. He's going all the way back to Shorish Market, to the root where he decided to be king. It means the beginning of the whole concept of creation. So in order for us to awaken within God that at his core he should want to be king, we have to go back to our core, to the etzem. And the etzem is that I am a servant of God. That the Rosh Hashanah is not a time to try to demonstrate your revelations, meaning your uniqueness, your sechel, your intellect, your feelings, your talents. That's not the time, Rosh Hashanah, because you're not getting in touch with God's revelations. You have to awaken within the essence of God that he wants to be king. So you have to awaken within the essence of yourself. I am a servant of the king. Before you actually awaken your talents, your giluyim, you have to first get in touch with your Kabbalah soul, accepting God as king. They're bad, and that's why he's saying the idea of that's the rash, that's the anias, the poverty in the beginning of the year, is because the person is him or herself in a status of poverty in their character. It's not about anything about who I am. It's not about any of my brain power, my emotions to feel God. It's about me accepting God as king. The Rebbe says, "Veish lahaisif, they're bad. Bir dir kalashin kol shana shirasha betchilas, any year that starts off in poverty in the beginning. Mivor behemshech ha'ilula." It's brought down in the Maimer. He means of basi lagani. Beinin rush vidal. What does it mean? Poverty. Sha'aniyas shal rush gedel yesem aniyas shal dal. We know there's different levels of poverty. There's different expressions of poverty in Lashon HaKodesh. There's ani, there's evion. So there's Rash, there's Dal. So in Kabbalah, in the Maimer, the Rebbe explains, the previous Rebbe explains in the Maimer of Basi Lagani, the Maimer he put out before he passed away, that in the description of poverty, Dal means thin, so it's thin. But Rash is even more is a deeper level of poverty. Dal means you're thin. Rash has nothing. It means poverty, you have absolutely nothing. The first letter of the word dal is a dalid. Dalid has a little yud at the back, right? If you look at the back of the dalid, it's a yud. Rash has no yud at the back. We know that the letters represent how it brings down a flow. We can analyze the shape of the letter to understand the character of the letter and what it represents. The resh is so poverty. It doesn't even have the yud at the back of the dalet. When you take away the yud from the dalet, you have a resh. When you're so poor spiritually that you don't even have the yud in the back of the dalet, that's a rash. That's the description of the poverty of a rash. That's the way the Rebbe says that, based on what we said before, that the accepting of the yoke, meaning in avoda, throughout the year is like a dal. You have the yud, means you're doing avoda, but you need to make sure that you're going to do the avoda 100%. So you have the component of Kabbalah soul that no matter what, you're going to do the mitzvah. But Rash means you have nothing. It's not about you at all. You're accepting God as king. Like we said before, the Kabbalas all throughout the year is a component to make sure you could serve Hashem better or properly, or do it if in case there's any pushback, any manias v'ikuvim, any obstacles. There is an entity here that's doing service, serving God, but you make sure that you do the service properly. Or at least the person wants to serve God. And you really want to serve God. I'm ready to accept the yoke no matter what to serve God. Because you already exist. And so to say, there's also the existence of the mitzvah. It's not so poor. It's like a dal, which has a yud at the back. When we talk about Rosh Hashanah, it's not even a yud. It's just the reish. It's lacking any kind of shape, any kind of identity. It's not even about that I'm accepting God, so I should be able to serve Him better. It's not about even serving. Serving already means you're involved. How could I help you? It's not about you at all. It's about you just accepting God as King without any higher purpose than that. The whole avodah is just accept God as the King. There's no identity here. Like it says in the verse, that the Rash, the person who's so poverty, that the description in Hebrew is the Rash, Ein Kol has nothing, no identity. So the Rebbe adds, hold on a second. V'dafka, only, when a person has that kind of initial start to the year, they totally get rid of any kind of self-identity. It's not about you at all. It's totally the Rosh and Kol. It's about that God is the King. Then you're a vessel for all the blessing. That's what it means. That it's not just that even if there is poverty in the beginning, there's wealth at the end. Because there's poverty in the beginning, because you totally clear out any identity of self, makes you a vessel for all the blessings. There's no limits to what you could reach. Then you have all the flow. Not just wealth spiritually, but misasheres b'seifa is mamish wealth. The whole year is wealthy at then. The Rebbe explains that in Chassidus it teaches that pirsh misasheres b'seifa she'ena kavana l'seifa shana. A person may think, how long does things have to be difficult, spiritually, physically, materially, throughout the year, to say that at the end it ends off okay, it ends off wealthy. How long? What's the rush? How long does the poverty last? So Chassidus explains, doesn't mean that you'll be wealthy at the end of the year. And Chassidus explains, as soon as you blow the shofar, you're ready in the end of the year. Up until shofar is the Rosh. As soon as you blow shofar, you're ready at Sefer Misasheres, you're already at the wealth. Is he the Rosh Tchila who koydem at Tkiyas? When is it considered poverty? Is before we blow the shofar. Excuse me, when you prepare yourself to blow the shofar, to accept the yoke through the sound of the shofar, or when you say the verses before you blow the shofar. What is one of the verses that we say before we blow the shofar? I'm calling out to God from meitzar, from contraction, from narrow space. I'm narrow in my thinking, in my intentions. In my speech. And the shofar itself demonstrates meitzar. The bottom of the shofar where you blow from is the narrow part of the shofar. Saying that you have to really, where's the real maisa of rash, of narrowness, of accepting the yoke. The shofar is when it takes a lot more energy to blow. You put that energy in the blowing of the shofar even more than the speech of saying the verses of Mina Meitzah. We know that the day of Rosh Hashanah is the day man was created, the sixth day of creation, when God breathed into man the living breath of the neshama. So the Rebbe says, Mechad Gisa on one side, Nimshach Inyan Hanaficha Mipnim Zachayas. God blew in from the inner depth of God's, so to say, existence, blew in a soul into the human form. Like it says, when someone blows, You're blowing from mitoichai, from within from within. You can't blow from externally. You have to really take a deep breath through your lungs and blow out. Mitoichai from the really inner part of the person. That unlike anything else in creation, the human being was created, where everything else is created from the external. The human being was created from the Yibach Ba'ap of God, blowed, so to say, from his inner core, which represents the connection to the human, from the human to God, is an essential, deep connection, because the human's creation comes from the tocha, from the breathing, from the blowing. Shu'inyan hadibur, that the rest of the world was created through speech, which is not so deep, where breathing is much deeper. Therefore, so too when it comes to demonstrating the Rash, the Kabbalas all, this accepting the yoke, when we say the verses before the shofar, and we say the verse min hameitza, that we're calling out to God from a narrow space, we're feeling very limited, such a meitza. We have no definition. We have total bittul. But nevertheless, it's not as deep as the blowing of the shofar, which requires the person to dig even deeper than just the speech of the verses of the shofar. But he says, so the rest of the creation was created through speech. And the Shamas Yisrael, but the souls of the Jewish people, come from the inner depth of God's being. Well, on the other side, we find the fact that there's the sound of the shofar coming from your breath, from your blowing, it means that it comes more physical than the sound of speech. Therefore, it's so powerful that even the body of a person that was created lifeless could get life from the blowing of God's breath, so to say, into the form of man. Like we learned, I think it was last week, that the difference between the human creation and the animal kingdom, the animal were created from a lower start, but their bodies are not so low. It's ruach and afa. It's ruach hamayim. I think eish ruach hamayim afa. So it's ruach hamayim. Whereas the goof comes from eish and afa. So the goof of the animal is higher than the body without the soul of the human. Because the animal was created alive. The human was created unlike any other creation. Every other creation was created complete. The animal came out a live animal, means the body and soul came out together. By the human, first God formed the body, lifeless, and at that moment it's much lower than the body of the animal. It has absolutely no life in it, and he breathed in it the breath of life. The ilu gufa adam, a person, had no life, not just a godly soul, had no life at all. It was just a goylem. It was just a lifeless glump of body. And God breathed life into that goylem, into that body. We see that in the Mamarm of Torah in the beginning of last week, that talks about why is it that the human was created different than the animal. So the Rebbe says, so too shofar. You need to put it in that much more difficult to blow shofar than to talk. She's admu. It says that one of the ideas is that the person's face turns red. Sometimes people shout, they also turn red, but usually when you speak, you don't have to. You don't see the physical effect on the person when the person speaks and when the person blows the shofar. It says it's brought down that she's admu pnei hatekeh, the blower's face turns red. Where's that quote from? It's brought down from the Arizal. And what's the idea? Inyan admum is hapanim. What's the idea of the redness of the face when you blow? Means you have to dig into deep energy, the regular energy to talk. That your so to say complexion doesn't change, doesn't require so much energy, so that your complexion stays regular. But when you blow the shofar, you have to put in more energy, and therefore your face reddens. You have to dig in deeper. So again, we see that the blowing of the shofar also, the sound is it becomes more of a physical, much more of a loud sound. So therefore, we see that there's much more physicality in the blowing of the shofar than in saying the verses. So the idea is that we have to bring down this Kabbalas all the way down to Maisa, to the action. It's not enough just to read the verses that you're accepting the yoke. You're mamish bringing it into your action. That in that you're bringing the meitzar, the narrowness. But when you call out God from limitations, when you're thinking about the kavanas of accepting the yoke, when you speak and you talk about mina meitzar, you say the verse, I'm calling out God from a narrow space. It means narrow not just because things are difficult, but totally cutting off any kind of identity. And then you're bringing into maisa, blowing the shofar from a narrow space. Right away comes the answer in abundance. Right after the Tkiyah shofar starts the wealth. So the Rebbe says, Amnam, ein mikra, yotzim de pshuta. That's all an idea. It's called like a drush. But you have to take the idea literally also. That it's not just like the idea that we said from Chassidus, that immediately after we blow the shofar starts the wealth, or becomes the full wealth. But misasheres b'seifa means that throughout the year, eventually there's going to be wealth. Even though that in Rosh Hashanah everyone hopefully was signed. I'm not going to add the word hopefully because the Rebbe doesn't say hopefully. It says everyone was signed and sealed in the books of the righteous. Like it says, all the Jewish people are righteous. And nevertheless we find that a person is judged every day. We talk about this is the daily judgment. As a person behaves daily, we want to see that, like we learned in the Memorim, that Hashem, though God allocates to a person a certain amount of blessing on Rosh Hashanah, God judges the person daily to see if that allocation should be given today. Should you draw from that reserve of blessing today? Maybe the person is not worthy. No, we're not going to allow that blessing to manifest physically in a successful day, let's say, spiritually or materially. Or the idea could stay as a concept, spiritually. But in order for it to manifest physically in today's space, right now I need a blessing. I need a blessing for Shalema. I need a blessing for healing. I need a blessing for Parnasa. Today, right now, I'm going into a business meeting. Or for my avodas Hashem. So the fact is that God says, 1 second, of course we allocated a huge amount for you. But you know, look what you did yesterday. Look what you did this morning. Nevertheless, the fact that the from Rosh Hashanah a person sealed and signed for a good year doesn't mean that it's not a contradiction. The idea of the wealth at the end. Ki kasher avoid the Roshani boyfriend the Rosh Betchilasa Shadani Kabbalas Sol as a nice and koich shachlatois and skabel Roshani give a takev. So the Rebbe says, what's the idea? That why is it not a contradiction if you're constantly being judged? Because the Rosh Hashanah, the allocation you were given is because you accepted the yoke on yourself, and because you accepted a firm commitment that this year is going to be a better year. So Rosh Hashanah gives you the ability to overcome the difficulties throughout the year and to stay on course. So you're nice and koyach, you're given the strength. Tashachlot is the resolutions you made in Rosh Hashanah. Shinskabel Rosh Hashanah you should have them with the strength. But they shouldn't change. If a person doesn't have the right resolutions, not in the same strength, then it could change. Okay, I committed to the diet, but I didn't really take everything into consideration, right? So then it doesn't hold water. But he says, when a person accepts the resolution very firmly, there's going to be no change. That means throughout the year. Now that we're leaving Tishrei, we're going into Cheshvan, or the end of the year. A Jew could stand strong like he or she stood in Rosh Hashanah with the same resolve of our commitment to godliness and to Torah mitzvahs. As a Rosh Hashanah Dikayid, the Rebbe says a person could lift themselves up to not just be a Rosh Hashanah Jew, that you only show up for Rosh Hashanah, but the whole year Rosh Hashanah Jew, that the whole year you're a Rosh Hashanah Jew. Kivan shekabbalas ha'achlotas ha'isa etzlai mimakom shelamayla mishinuyim, because you were able to reach a level of consistency within yourself. You took the resolutions from a place that is consistent. There's no change. And that assures that if your resolution in Rosh Hashanah was from such a deep place, that you're consistent and your resolve is solid, so then you're going to see the wealth as it comes manifests itself throughout the year. And because we said that the whole month of Tishrei means Rashis, the beginning, and also poverty, that he says that right now we're sitting here Shabbos Noach, and it's after the holiday of Tishrei, the whole month of Tishrei, and we're after Simchas Torah, even after the post-holiday. And we already called out in the synagogue, it's time for Jacob to go on the road, right? Hit the road, Jack. But if a person has a solid resolve, even as you go into the next month, and we're entering the month of Cheshvan, you're still drawing and connected to the month of Tishrei. Now that we're holding the first of Cheshvan, and we see that Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan always goes into Tishrei. Why? Because the first day of the month of Cheshvan is really the 30th day of the month of Tishrei. Whenever there's 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of Rosh Chodesh is the last day of the previous month. Because we know, we learned in the laws, that Rosh Hashanah, that the month of the Jewish month is 29 and a half days. So when you have some months, sometimes we carry the half day in the end of the 30th, and we have 30 days, and sometimes we carry it only in the next month. So we have, if you have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new month is really the 30th, is also the 30th day of the past month. Also, if you have to write a document on the 30th, on the first of Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, you're not going to write the first of Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, you're going to write Lamed Tishrei. It means you're still mentioning Tishrei. We know that Tishrei is always a full month. There's always 30 days in the month of Tishrei. Certain months that are always 30, certain months that are always 29, and certain months that are could be here or there. You know that the full months are like the king months. They're not lacking, they're not poverty months. A month that's 29 is not the full month, because a month should be 29 and a half days. But because you can't have 30 days, you can't have 20, you can't have half days, and you can't have every day 30, because then you have too many days of the year. And the months are going to go off. So therefore we have half and half, pretty much. It's like it's brought down. There can never be more than 8 months that are full. So what do we see from this? That not only is the 30th day of Tishrei also a day of Tishrei, it actually completes Tishrei. Because what makes Tishrei a special month, a full month, is the fact that there is the 30th day. And that 30th day is already is also part of Cheshvan. It's Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan. The idea is we have to bring in that idea of Rashis. The beginning starts off with poverty, with Kabbalas oil, with a strong resolve. And then we bring that energy into the rest of the year, especially starting from the month of Cheshvan. And that allows for there be the wealth at the end. Already when we come today, that Thursday today is the second day of Cheshvan, second day of Rosh Chodesh, which is the first day of the month of Cheshvan. That right away, already we have the effect of the oisher, of the wealth, carrying over from the month of the Kabbalas of the accepting of the yoke of the month of Tishrei. Just like we said from the name of the Mittel Rebbe, that the idea of that poverty in the beginning and wealth at the end means before blowing the shofar and after blowing the shofar. So too, in a more macro idea, there's the month of Tishrei, which the whole month is called poverty. From the word Tishrei, you move around the word is Rashis, Rosh. That right away you go into the first day of Cheshvan. We're going to start seeing the signs of the success, of the wealth. We have the Rasha means the poverty, the Rash, the poverty both in our avoida, and unfortunately, a person's year started off negative, also material things. If your health or if your wealth or other things that maybe didn't go so well for you in the month of Tishrei, you should know that that's a sign that right away coming month of Cheshvan starts good things. The wealth comes right away. As soon as you finish the month of Tishrei. On the first day of the month of Cheshvan. That's really, when does Jacob go on the road totally out of the month of Tishrei? Is the first day of Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Cheshvan, which is the second day of Rosh Chodesh. Because Yaakov was still taking down his sukkah a day or two after Sukkot. Then the Shabbos Bereshis, and then you have to get home, and then you have to unpack it. So when do you really go into the winter, so to say? When do you really walk away from Tishrei? Is the second day of Rosh Chodesh. A person, we're still getting over the holiday. When do you really start going into the new year? When did you kind of cut yourself off from the previous, from the month of Tishrei, so to say, and you're no longer in the holiday mode? It's time to get serious and work. And Avodas Hashem is Yaakov al Chadarka starts the beginning of Cheshvan. And this gives us energy throughout the year. Even though, like we said before, a person is judged daily. If you properly incorporated the idea of the Kabbalas soul of accepting the yoke in the beginning, the Rosh, the poverty, Rosh Ein Koil, your mom is totally lost identity, really totally got down to your core. Right away you bring the wealth. Throughout the year. Ubepashtus. The Rebbe says, how can we bring this down practically? That a person has to have wealth in all the meanings of the word. V'hainu, what is the definition of wealth? We know that the halacha says there's the idea of daich machseirei. There's the idea of filling a person's what the person's lacking. That the person has if you give tzedakah, you give charity, it says you have to bring a person who's unfortunately poor, become poor. So it says you have to bring that person to machsei roy, what that person's lacking. If you have a person that once was very rich, and in a sign of their wealth, they had 50 ish ratzim lefanov, they had 50 people running in front of them, as a sign that here comes a wealthy person, right? A whole entourage of people to show, the whole motorcade, right? So now that you're poor, you can say, okay, fine, I'm going to give you a small car. Why do I have to sponsor a motorcade? I mean, now you just need the basics. No. The halacha says that what's the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tzedakah? They machsei roi, what this person's lacking. If a year ago, 5 minutes ago, the person's life was to a certain level of expression that 50 people are running in front of, so in order to give tzedakah at its fullest, you have to bring that person back to that space. But you don't have to make him wealthy. There's the day machsei, and Chassidus goes very much into that. That a person could have tremendous expressions of success, but you're still not an Aisha, you're still not wealthy. Ashiris is beyond that. Real wealth is beyond just bringing a person back to where they started from. I love Kivyachal ba'ifin sh'atim mitzav l'ashir, but now it has to be that we said soifim misasheres doesn't mean that God has to bring us back to our full abilities, to our full what we were used to, what we could have been. But He has to bring us wealthy. It means much more, much beyond. And the Rebbe says we're not just talking about spiritual wealth. Torah, meaning to say that you're going to learn fantastically. Became a mitzvah, fulfilling the mitzvahs fantastically. The Rebbe says everything has to come down in Maisa. That physical wealth. That manifests in physical things. Whether it's the money a person needs, that's not just the person should have everything that they're lacking. But total shiris is a total different mindset than you just have what you're lacking, even if what you're lacking is a large amount. It's a mindset of an oisher, of a rich person, or anything else that is in the physical. It could be your health, it could be other things, your social life, etc. Heichel, the Rebbe says, starting Michaim Toivim, a yid should have a good life. Uman de Yav Chay Yav Mizaynai. That when you're talking, what does it mean? Life is the one who could give life. He give also the one God who gives life. Just like we could live, He could also give us parnasa. God doesn't just have to create us. The person says, "Well, how is He going to give me parnasa?" He made you. You're alive. So if He made you life, if you're alive, He could also provide for you. Bonei in the blessings of children, Chaya in our health, Mizoine in our success, in our parnasa, Vikulam and all them, not just to have the basics, but in the Ravichan in abundance. Kain Tiyalanu, the Rebbe says, so should be. Amen, Kain Yehi Ratzin. The Rebbe gives a tremendous blessing that should be. He uses Amen, Kain Yehi Ratzin, may it be God's will. We know the idea of Yehi Ratzin means that even if there wasn't a will, not just that it should be, but there should be a will from God that it should be that way. That when we say Yehi Ratzin, let it be God's will, means that if there was no will from God to give this person a brach and ashirus, now let there be Kain Yehi Ratzin, God should create a new will and a new desire and say, yes, I want to give this person ashirus. And whatever it means for that person, whatever they need, again, in health, success, in nachas from their children. Excuse me. And this is how a person has to have the mindset that after we leave the Tishrei, which is also Roshis, which means from the word Rosh, we go into the month of Cheshvan. We start with the brachas of Misasheres B'Soifai. Ha'inyan, when a person, the Yaakov halachal darka, Yaakov now goes into the month of Cheshvan. Yaakov goes on his and her way. Einei stam b'chiras pasuk. Elaz maschala emes ha'inyan the Yaakov halachal darka. We're not just saying this is a pasuk. Yaakov goes on his way. That this is the idea. It's true. Yaakov goes on his way. Which means that although Yaakov, where was he going? He left. Although the pasuk Yaakov Darcha is talking about after he left Charan. It's always kind of the verses go together. The verse actually Yaakov Darcha is after him and love and split. But also the idea of Yaakov leaves Beersheba, the well of 7, which is of an abundance. He goes to the anger of the world. The Charan Af Shamakim Bailim. He goes to the angry place of the world. Right? The world's very angry today. All the narratives, all the screaming, all of this, all anti-God. That's the place, that's where Yaakov has to go to be effective. Livnes Bayis Yisrael. For Yaakov to build his family, to find his wives, build his family, have his children. He did that all by loving in the place of Charan, in the angry place of the world. And when Yaakov heard from God, the promise that I'm going to be with you on this journey. It says, when he heard from God the good news, God assured him that I'm with you in this journey. His heart and his feet jumped. It was an easy, he walked with a bounce. Like when a person walks heavy, it's hard to walk. Where am I going? I'm going to Charan, I'm going to Lavan, it's difficult. But God came to him in the vision of the ladder and said, I'm with you. This is a journey. You're going to come back home. So Yaakov, Raglav, it was kal. He walked kal alechas. It was easy for him to go. So too when we go into the month of Cheshvan. After we got the good news, Tishrei, that we went through the month of Tishrei, and we were sure 100% after Shemoni Atzeres, after Shana Rabbah, that we were blessed with the Shana Tayvim Mesukah. Now we go on our way. We have to go into the world to be effective. Live nice bias, build a house for God. Our house, a Jewish home. Making God a resting place, a dwelling place in this world. How do we do it? Through the Torah v'kim mitzvahs, the study of Torah and performance of mitzvahs. We don't just do it schlepping. We don't become schleppers in the world. It's in a wealthy way, in an abundance. The Rebbe says he's blessing that every person of the Jewish people should have a shir skipshutam, actual physical, no pshetlach, no interpretations, an actual idea of wealth, meshachal shana throughout the year. Ashirs binyanim ruchnim, you should have wealth in your spiritual growth. Ashirs binyanim gashmi, you should have wealth in your material. In yani parnasa, anyone who needs parnasa, the Rebbe is blessing them. And we will learn a Sicha, the Rebbe is blessing us now. We should have the parnasa that we need. V'atzlachim, we should have success, Rabbah, tremendously. Binyanim ruchnim in spiritual, binyanim gashmi al yachad together. Piskim, like the saying of Koik Dush Marcham Yadrim, my father-in-law, meaning the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Hashem Rabbeinu Hazakin, in the name of the Alter Rebbe. Shakadosh Baruch Hu noisin of Bnei Yisrael gashmius. Then why does God give material blessing to a Jewish person? Ubnei Yisrael oisim yagashmis ruchnis. It's our job. God says, here's a check. Now, what are you going to do with the check? What are you doing with the money? What are you doing with the gashmis? Make it holy. Make it ruchnis. Make it spiritual. Make it godly. And then everyone's happy. The Jewish people are happy because they have more ruchnias, and it's easier to do what they have to do because they have a lot of gashmias. And God is happy because you gave him a good return on investment. V'tihi shana shel simcha, and it should be a happy year for everyone. Sheba yasas kol anyanim, that we should do everything that has to be done. V'tech simcha v'toiv levav, from good happiness and a good heart, means we're coming from a good place. V'tech menuchas hanefesh. The Rebbe is blessing everyone that we should have menucha, calmness, like the word Noach. V'ad shebayim l'tachas kol anyanim, we should come to the highest levels, which means the Geula Mitzvah Shlema, the true redemption. Aydei Mashiach Tzidkenu, through Mashiach, the Karev Mamish speed in our time. We didn't get to the rest of the Sicha. The Rebbe goes into, I think, a bit about the nations of the world, which is a little bit applicable to the times that we're in, but I guess everyone can learn that on their own. Yashar Koach, thank you everyone for joining. Laila Tov, take care. Good Shabbos.